The country that pays only tithe and not tax will never prosper more than the countries that pay tax. Write it down. Countries where people pay only tithe, or I don't know the Muslim equivalent of it, they can never be prosperous more than countries where they pay tax. More people pay tithe in Nigeria than they pay tax. Both in Christianity and Islam. See where we are. Poverty, capital of the world. It affects also Christians. If you go through the whole of the New Testament, tithe was mentioned, I think, in Hebrews passing and in Matthew in passing. But tax, I have come to Romans chapter 13. From verse 1, it says, everyone is to obey the governing.
In Nigeria, are not paying enough tax, and you need to pay more taxes in order to be jolly good fellow with the poor. And one of the areas where our economic gap can be covered is if we address this lacuna that will make the rich to pay more tax. And it's comfortable for them to pay. I know the rich argument is that we generate employment, we provide jobs, all sorts of things like that. But that is not sufficient for revenue balance. There is need for us to have good, resounding revenue in order to fund the budget. If a man buys a private jet at $60 million and he pays no tax, because the aircraft is registered in a country that doesn't collect tax, then you know the aviation industry have to do something to make sure the tax is paid. Particularly when the aircraft is carrying American number. So, obviously speaking, the tax is not paid. And you know, in America, you can donate the aircraft for $1 to an American citizen forever. And that person can lease the aircraft back to you forever for $1. So you don't pay any tax. So I think this is the area where we should develop, all of us. I can see a lot of rich people buying luxury properties, Rolls Royces and all that. I believe there should be special taxes on this. Once God has helped you to avoid to buy all those luxury, the same God will help you to pay more taxes on those luxuries. I think I will stop at that, except you have any question for me. Yes.
Yes, sir. My name is Topsy Gimba. I report for ASO Radio. I report for ASO Radio and Television, sir.
Yes.
I want to look at this aspect. Like, for instance, if I happen to be a successful farmer, I cultivate rice and I get in many bags.
An economic problem. It's not. You don't solve. In fact, listen. Listen very well. Oh, God. The country that pays only tithe and not tax will never prosper more than the countries that pay tax. Write it down. Countries where people pay only tithe, or I don't know the Muslim equivalent of it, they can never be prosperous more than countries where they pay tax. More people pay tithe in Nigeria than they pay tax. Both in Christianity and Islam. See where we are. Poverty, capital of the world. It affects also Christians. If you go through the whole of the New Testament, tithe was mentioned, I think, in Hebrews passing and in Matthew in passing. But tax, I have come to Romans chapter 13. From verse 1, it says, everyone is to obey the governing authorities because there is no authority except from God. And so whatever authorities exist are by God. So anyone who disobeys an authority is rebelling against God's ordinance. And all of that, it talks about magistrates and all that. Then in verse 6, he says, and this is why you should pay taxes too. Because the authorities are all serving God as his agents. And this is why you should pay taxes too. There is an express command of paying tax in the Bible than tithes in the New Testament. Pay tax, hold your government responsible. Countries like Denmark, all the first world countries, there are countries that pay taxes and their government use their taxes. They are much better than those places where you pay tithes. And they are building heavy religious worship centers and stuff like that. A country that still sponsors people to pilgrimage. People are going to pilgrimage in Israel and Saudi Arabia. Carry the money you should have used to build hospitals and schools. You know, Nigeria, everything in Nigeria is not good. Because everything in Nigeria, the God in Nigeria is a local God, like local rice. There is too much sand and stone on it. Is the God in Jerusalem and the one in Saudi Arabia. We will not have sense. Even Christians who are educated, I'm expecting to have sense. Christians should tell federal government, stop sponsoring Christians for pilgrimage. We don't want that millions, hundreds of millions of naira they use for pilgrimage. They should give us that. Let us use it and build hospital where Christians can be having free medical checkup. If they want to be giving our Muslim brothers to be going to Saudi Arabia, let them give them their own. But for our Christian, pilgrimage is supposed to be an individual thing. If you have the money and you want to go, you go. Government is foolish to be using money for infrastructure. Not even rich countries sponsor their people for pilgrimage. And here we are so religious that, do you know how much they use for pilgrimages? If they tell you how much they use for pilgrimages, you weep. And what is the pilgrimage? You will go to Jerusalem. So you go there, God will come down. Jesus will now come afresh, you will see him. And the God you are going to see there is not the God that we are serving here. Who do us these things, Seth? In a country where you have no... See, should wake up. Make an agreement with the government. That money for pilgrimage, since you don't want to stop it, give us our own. And it should be transparently used to build either hospital or schools. Is made up of different blocks. They can share how people can benefit from it. God is here. Manza.
So if you are a farmer and you are successfully able to get 1 billion or 2 billion and you now want to buy a house in Dubai, you think we should not tax you. You can't pass over that to the consumer. That's your own personal affairs. It's transactional cost. I'm looking at laws that we actually police transactional tax for the rich. That's what I'm looking at. And we can do this with international judicial collaborations. And that is the only way by which we can get this transactional cost, transactional tax for the rich. This is very important. So we are not saying tax your business. No. Government will provide incentive. Government will provide incentive for your business to triumph. But we are saying at the end of the business, there is something that belongs to you, which is your own income, which you are now using to buy properties from the money you made from that business. Is that transactional cost that I think the law should focus on? For example, if you buy a car or anything, you pay 7.5% VAT. The same thing the rich man will pay. Does that make sense? Yes. From me, I'm just suggesting. I'm just suggesting area where we can buffer revenue in the coming year, because you know our GDP to debt ratio now is 49.5%. So half size of the economy is on loan. Now the challenge you have here is that additional borrowing reduces your growth. You know that. So you can't grow with additional borrowing. And again, without borrowing, you cannot develop at all. So you are in a quagmire, and you need to come out of it. And this is revenue. And you know, people talk about Bola Tinubu, government here and there, things are tough. I laugh many times. Because this is completely nonsensical. Because you didn't report, as journalists, that Buhari government handed over 1% cash to GDP ratio. The handing over note of Buhari government, he handed over 1% cash to GDP. So as we talk now, GDP to cash is 1.5%. Now tell me, you take over Punch today, and then they tell you the cash available is 1.5%. You have 500 reporters to pay their salary. You have to print that same night that you take over. You have to buy ink. You have to circulate. You must not reduce the size. You must not sack people. And your cash to GDP, to the size of Punch, is 1%. How will you move? Or Guardian, or Mirror, or anything that you buy. Or you take over First Bank. That's as when you buy First Bank. And the cash ratio to size of First Bank is 1%. So if First Bank worth 3 trillion, the cash available is 300 billion. Now, 3 customers are sending instruction to transfer 500 billion. How do you want to do that? Your cash crop instantly. If you are a president and you are not Tinubu, how will you manage 1% cash ratio to GDP without printing money? If you print more money, you increase money circulation, it leads to inflation, it leads to foreign exchange, rioting and all that, and the economy becomes burdensome to people. I'm talking from knowledge. I'm not talking from sentiment. I'm talking from empirical data. If you ask Central Bank Governor today, what is GDP to tax ratio? Cash, GDP to cash. You are the treasurer of Nigeria. It's 1.5%. So you then have the Central Bank Governor, how do you want to move 1.5% to reduce dollar and inflation for capital? Because if you are an economist, or you are a businessman, or you are an economic reporter or energy reporter, you already know when somebody say is handing over 1.5% cash ratio to GDP, that the country is in financial danger state. I don't think you even take any appointment from that government, but you know there's no cash. So these are the area, and that is why at the World Bank IMF I suggested that Nigeria should bring application for voucher for food. That is, government should collapse all palliative accounts in central bank to one single account and print voucher and give it to 30 million vulnerable Nigeria, 100,000 per month, people above 18 years for a period of 1 year. Then all the noise about poverty thing will just come down, zero. Because you know every month you get 100,000, your daughter will get, your children will get above 18, and it's for 1 year, so you have to make sure that you prepare for the next year by yourself. And when you print voucher, you reduce money supply. Inflation comes down, interest rate collapse, because you are using voucher, you are not using cash. And I think that was well received at the IMF. I'm sure some of you must have reported that. You saw it in CNN and all that. So we expect that voucher for food will solve the problem of food insecurity. But again, you need that to come again, because you need to know who are the 30 million Nigeria that are in dangerous poverty line, that we need to take them out quickly. So if we print this, if we give 10 billion naira to state governor, as we did last time, which I criticized the government for, 10 billion to a governor for palliative, fantastic intention. When the governor gets to, he used to whatever he likes. But if you are giving, how would life be if you gave 10 billion vouchers to the governor? And nobody can take more than one voucher. All vouchers are serially numbered, and it's only 100,000 per person. And voucher ink blue is for January, purple is for February, red is for March. So you can't use blue in March or yellow in April. So what does it mean? An unused voucher is destroyed. And then of course, numbers, you are using numbers, you are spending numbers, you are not spending cash. The cost of printing cash can be more than the value of the cash itself. So you run away from all of this and you drag down the economy into profitability. I didn't want to go into detail. I want to talk about the rich not paying enough tax. So don't drag me that. It's not interest. I'm not talking about property tax. No. I don't even support any property tax, because property tax will go to the tenants, whether you like it or not. I'm talking about people buying luxury. I'm talking about how many inflow that goes to countries like Dubai, like UK. Those are the things I'm talking about. So I think that we should look at that very critically. If you tax property, the owner will tax the tenants. So we're not going to look at that, particularly commercial properties or rentable properties. But we're talking about, luxury tax. Let's even start at that. Let's assume that we get the first 100 richest Nigerians into the tax net for luxury, and we give them a code, and we monitor their transaction. They will get more money. You can even get more money than half of what the entire nation will pay in taxes. For example, Nigeria VAT collectible is about 5% of the entire of South Africa. So how do you do it? And about 5% or about 25% of that of Kenya. So Kenya is about 60-something million. South Africa is 10 million. Kenya is about 54 million. So obviously we are 224 million. So to tell you, the GDP to tax ratio here is 18%. What is GDP? Size of the economy. So what is tax? So tax is what you pay to government as obligation for your activities. Now, the GDP to tax ratio is 18%, meaning that 72% of people are not under tax net. And you think this is good for the economy that want to be serious? If you have 72% of the people not under tax net of your GDP, you are in financial danger lane. It will be difficult for you to progress. In the United States, for example, GDP to tax ratio is 100%. In UK, it's maybe 105%. People are overtaxed than what they're supposed to pay. But in Nigeria, it's 18% GDP to tax ratio. Only 18% of the economic size know anything about tax. 72 never heard about tax. And like you said, you will remember having been now in the National Assembly, going to the second reading, which is Federal Data Bank. So if we have a Federal Data Bank at the end of the day, you can just click and you see the list of 100 richest Nigeria from the data bank. You can even see total list of journalists we have in Nigeria. Just click the data bank. They give you the name and address and details, and you know what to do with them. So obviously you need the data bank to get this done, but not that you have to do property tax. No, I think that is not it. But you should be worried that 72% of Nigeria population is not in the tax net. They have never seen tax, heard about it in their lifetime. And what we are now saying is that we don't say go and be taxing the poor. But what we are saying is that you should simply look at the rich first. Because in a trying time like this, the rich have a lot of role to play. You might say things are bad. It's not everybody that things are bad for. People are still using, when things are bad, it's the greatest time to make money, I'm sure you know. If you look at the way of strategy, it says the greatest opportunity to make good things in chaotic situation. Making opportunities in chaotic situation is a Harvard definition of strategy. Making it under a chaotic situation. Every chaotic situation provides a fantastic and robust strategy for you to move and make more money. Is this money we say should be taxed?
Yes. Can I ask?
Maybe one more.